We were just talking about some of the devastation coming out of the federal government right now, but it appears even though there are attacks on all sorts of programs and funding efforts, the work that you all are doing at your office continues at the Office of Access, Equity, and Community Engagement. Talk to us about how you all are faring in these very curious times.
Well, we have great leadership, and what we are doing in my office is providing opportunities for youth disadvantaged from all across the state, and as a result of a concentrated effort, um, we are being successful, and all students means all students. And when we can get our arms around that concept, it really, from an educational perspective, keeps you on solid ground, no matter what people may think or say. So we are obligated to educate all students.
Oh, I love that because you just brought it back home to basics. You said don't you define what you're going to define, how you're going to define it, but all means all. We were very clear about that, and I love that. And folks, I see that we've got Valdez and a couple folks on the line. We're going to be taking calls at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. So if you cannot hold on, please share with the call screener your comment, and then we'll try to address it in that hour as well. But Dr. Alston, I appreciate that you are approaching it this way. You and your team are approaching it this way because it seems as though there is a real effort right now from political spaces. I know you all are nonpartisan, but it seems as though there's a real effort to divide groups of communities against other groups of communities, to resurrect a lot of divisions. But talk to us about what it really means to have a program that is going to look at all students. And are you looking at all students the same, or are you looking at all students with the eye towards what those particular students and their home populations may actually need?
So when we look at students, you look at student needs. And again, because we're an educational organization and my office is obviously a part of one, we look at what has happened in the past. So we know that whole school/education reform tends to make some winners and some losers, or and not everyone benefits.
Right.
And so what we're doing through My Brother's Keeper is we're looking at what the needs are. This wasn't just a program developed in a vacuum. This was going around the entire state, talking to young people, having a blue ribbon commission, the Board of Regents having a work group focused on boys and young men of color, and then seeing what the research says. What are the best practices? And again, because we're about education and an outcome-based initiative, then we are then obligated to do what we know would move the needle. And what we're finding is that it's wildly successful.
Huh. Imagine that, using best practices and science research-based principles. That seems to work. And so can we talk a little bit about those best practices? Because it feels, again, as though a lot of people seem to have, there's a new political wind blowing, and a lot of folks seem to have abandoned some of those best practices. As you and your team consider what you're looking at when it comes to your ability to meet the needs of these students, what are some of those best practices that really ground you in being as successful as y'all have been with continuing to do this work?
Well, I think in terms of best practices, we have a guidance document on the New York State My Brother's Keeper website, and some of them are engaging communities in ways that engender trust, confidence, and respect. If schools can do it alone, they probably would, but we need that partnership with community. That is a best practice. It's irrefutable, it's incontrovertible. You can try it in urban New York City, you can try it in rural Buffalo, out Western New York. Okay, that's one example. Another example is the science of reading, right? Using the fundamental principles of literacy and going deep with it. Another example tied to that, let's call it brother and sister, a culturally responsive curriculum and teaching. And now I've lived in rural central New York, okay? And culturally responsive doesn't just mean Black students or Hispanic students. It means in the context to where you are working, what are the things that people are familiar with, the way they do things that will resonate. And I assure you, the things I learned in living in central New York is very different in terms of relating to my audience and being an instructional leader is very different than what I would learned in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn,
Right.
growing up in the 80s and 90s.
Right. So this is a universal principle that has contextual application depending on the community in which you live. And it's going to be educators like yourself who are going to ensure that our students continue to receive what it is that they need and not what, political thoughts determine should be the rule of the day. Let's talk about My Brother's Keeper. This is a program that is a jewel, one of the crown jewels, I think, in the New York education system. I know it's not just in New York, but I'm a little partial. I feel like we do it better in New York than in other places. Although I know it is doing wonderfully across the country. Talk to us about this program. As I recall, this is something that came out of the Obama administration, and it's still going strong. Talk to us about what My Brother's Keeper looks like today.
My Brother's Keeper in New York State, often referred to New York State My Brother's Keeper, is an initiative focused on the needs of improving outcomes for boys and young men of color, which is one way that the department meets the needs of all students. Okay.
Now, wait a minute, sir. How are you meeting the needs of boys and young men of color and using that as an indicator that you're meeting the needs of all students? Can you? Because some folks are going to see that and then they're gonna feel like there's no bridge. Make that bridge for us so that we can walk the entire audience across.
Sure. Different students tend to need different things, and what a good teacher does is differentiate their approach to helping students get to the outcome.
That's right.
So if you're looking at the data and you're looking at the demographics, and year after year, you see this group of students are struggling or there are gaps. The intelligent thing to do is to say, okay, what might we do that would help? Right. And what we have found is that by asking and constantly asking and bringing in research and bringing in experts and community and community-based organizations, we then began to build a model that, when executed, is giving us the results that we have. And so the bridges, there are a range of students across New York State, and there are lots of systems in place for a variety of different kinds of students. Right. We know what happens when a student is accelerated or advanced. They don't get the same thing that the person who needs assistance in literacy or phonics. They don't get the same thing. And so you start looking at students that way, and it becomes a lot easier to say, this is one example of meeting the needs of all students.
It's been really, this era we find ourselves in weighs heavy on the soul, and you and I have had some interaction even beyond these airwaves, and so we've been in conversation and in spaces where the heaviness of this moment is there. And I got to be honest with you, it really does my heart some good to realize, or to be reminded, that there are folks like yourself, programs like this that are out there that are cutting through the noise, keeping your heads down, and doing the work of making sure that our students have what they need. And My Brother's Keeper New York, you all have a pretty big event coming up. Talk to us a little bit about that. And is the vibrancy of this program that we see in New York State, do you find that it's reflected across the country still?
New York tends to be a leader. So I'll start with
true.
Just a little bit, right?
True.
On May 1st, we will have the New York State My Brother's Keeper Symposium in Albany, New York. We will convene roughly 1,100 students, family, and community partners, school leaders, district leaders, teachers, elected officials, and the goal is to inform, inspire, and empower our MBK community through keynote speakers, presentations, workshops, student performances, student speaking. From the main stage in front of 1,100 people, their journey, their story, and they've been trained to do so. And it will be live streamed because this is an invite-only event.
Okay.
It will be live streamed on the New York State Education Department website, www.niced.gov, and to make it available to anyone who can't attend in person. That is significant because often you don't get the opportunity, young people, to come to Albany to meet the elected officials who put together the policy. The commissioner will be there, Dr. Betty A. Rosa, Dr. Lester W. Young, our chancellor of New York State. Yes. They will be giving remarks and other surprise elected officials.
Oh, okay. Surprise, surprise. The names that you mentioned I'm a fan. so,
Okay.
so that works for me. And that was the New York State Education website. That's NYSED. Is that .edu, or is, because I want to make sure that we get the web.
.gov.
.gov. That's why I did every extension except that one. I did com, org, ed. Okay, yes. NYS like state, E like education, D like department, folks, is where you'll be able to live stream this. And it's important that we do tune into the locations and the organizations that are continuing to do this work, because it's going to be helpful for all of us. I get emails and I get hit up on DMs and people are like, well, I'm dealing with this particular issue in education here. And Dr. Alston, I'm not an education expert. I'm an advocate with the microphone. And so being able to connect the broader audience with groups like yours who are going to be sharing this information, this is going to be huge. And it's so important right now because there are, as we know, a lot of attacks against a lot of programs that are trying to do as best they can to make this work last. Just in the moment or two that we have left, Dr. Alston, paint for us your vision of what will be the outcome of this sort of work as it, in its best format, meets the needs of our students, boys and young men from our community. Paint the vision for us, if you will, as to what it looks like when this work continues.
When this work continues, the outcomes dramatically improve for not only boys and young men of color. We have found that it improves for all students in this particular school district. Why does that matter?
Wow.
When we look at graduation rates, we tend to look at numbers. I tend to look at lives. What are the life options of a young person in Syracuse who, let's take a Hispanic or Latino young person? If only 52% graduate, what are the options for the other the percentage of students? And so when we look at it in terms of life and life opportunities and options, the jump from 52% to 72% since we've been MBK in Syracuse is a
Wow.
20% increase. That absolutely matters. If we're talking about African Americans in East Ramapo, and again, this is all African Americans, when we look at the 13% increase from 2016 to 2024, 78% in the 80s now. Like, that's significant. Why is that significant? Because the life opportunities and the predictors of poor health and criminality and all of that stuff is connected. And
Yes.
so that's in part why I also think we have an obligation. And because we have leadership like Chancellor Young and Commissioner Rosa and the Board of Regents who support this work, of course, the legislature and the governor has it in her budget or has had it in previous years. That makes all of the units come together and work towards a common north. So I'm excited about the symposium. And I did want to say, on the New York State Education Department website, which is www.niced.gov/MBK, are a trove of golden resources.
Whoa, I'm looking at it right now.
Every symposium that we've had since 2016 is posted on there. The breakout sessions from nationally, local, statewide experts in education and youth development are there. We have Dr. Pedro Noguera. We have Dr. Yolanda Sealy Ruiz. We have Dr. Ron Ferguson. We have E.T. the hip hop preacher. We have, we have a lot of resources on there that really help educators reach students in ways, inspire them, inform their self-image, and really help bring out the brilliance. And that's what MBK is about, bringing out their highest potential, as Vanessa Siddell Walker outlined in her book many years ago.
Dr. Alston, we've reached the end of our time. The man is about to cut us off, but we are definitely going to spread this link. And I hope maybe in a month or so you can come back and give us an update on how things went. And I'd like to keep in touch with the MBK team because I feel like you all are going to be one of those standout organizations that helps the rest of us figure out how to navigate this storm. Thank you so much for being with us today.